Hello, these are stories of things that happened on the day we call Good Friday. And they're taken from the Bible, starting in John chapter 18, and they're based on retellings by Bob Hartman in his Easter stories. All Pilate wanted was a peaceful life, and he might have had one had he been a butcher, or a baker, or maybe a candlestick maker. But Pilate was the Roman governor of the country of Judea, and nobody got put to death in Judea without Pilate's permission. And that's why the morning after Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane and his secret trial in the house of the high priest that night, Pilate's courtyard was anything but peaceful. At one end stood the religious leaders shouting,
"This man is dangerous. Yes, he says you don't have to pay your taxes. Yes, and he says he's a king."
At the other end stood Jesus, looking tired and sad and all alone. Pilate turned to Jesus. "Are you a king?" Jesus answered, "Yes, I suppose I am, but not the kind of king that you're thinking about." Pilate looked at Jesus again and at the religious leaders.
"Well, he seems pretty harmless to me. I can't see any reason to put him to death."
At this, the religious leaders shouted even louder. And then Pilate was aware of another voice whispering in his ear. His wife had crept out into the courtyard and was whispering to him, "This man here, I had a terrible dream about him. He's innocent. You must have nothing to do with this." Pilate's life was even less peaceful now, but he had to find a solution. That was his job.
"I know. Why don't we let the people decide?"
And he smiled to himself in a smug, satisfied way, because he'd come up with what he thought was a rather clever plan. Every year, at the time of Passover, Pilate allowed the people to choose to release one prisoner, and it was Passover now. At that time, in their prisons, they had a rather nasty criminal called Barabbas, who was a thief and a murderer. And Pilate thought, well, surely they're going to choose to release Jesus rather than Barabbas. But the religious leaders saw what he was up to. So they went out and told the crowd, "Shout to release Barabbas." Now, many of the people didn't really know what was going on, so they just did what the religious leaders told them. And there may have been some good people in the crowd there, but it's very hard to shout for the good things when nearby noisy people are shouting or doing bad things.
"Release Barabbas!"
they shouted.
"Yes, release Barabbas! We want Barabbas!"
Pilate was a bit taken aback.
"But if I release Barabbas, that means I will have to kill Jesus!"
the religious leaders shouted.
"Yes, crucify him! Kill Jesus!" "And if you don't," the religious leaders shouted, "if you don't, we'll tell Caesar. We'll tell Caesar that you've let go someone who said he was a king, and it would cause trouble and riots, and you'll get in trouble for not keeping the peace."
All Pilate wanted was a peaceful life. And so he thought, But before he said anything, he did one last thing. He got a bowl of water and a towel. And he said,
I wash my hands of this situation.
And he plunged his hands into the bowl of water.
Okay, he said, release Barabbas and take Jesus away.
The religious leaders didn't care, they shrugged. And the soldiers led Jesus away. And at last, Pilate's palace was peaceful. And all it had taken was the life of just one innocent man.
The high priest's servants had been cruel to Jesus, but the Roman soldiers were crueler still. The first thing they did when they dragged Jesus out from Pilate's palace was they threw him down and they beat him. And then they ripped the clothes from his back and they whipped him so hard that his back bled. And then they decided they were going to make fun of him. "Oh, so you think you're a king then? Oh, we better dress you up like one." And one soldier ran and found a piece of purple cloth, the colour that kings wear, and they stood Jesus up and made him wear it. "Oh, well, a king needs a crown, doesn't he?" And another soldier ran to the thorn bushes and broke off a branch and curled it round to make a crown. And then he rammed it down on Jesus' head so hard that there was blood running down his face. And then the third one said, "Oh, well, a king needs a sceptre, doesn't he?" So they ran and found a big stick and made Jesus hold it. And then they bowed down before him, laughing. "Oh, hail your majesty! Oh, hail, King of the Jews!" But after a bit they got tired of that. And so they decided to beat him again. So they took the stick and they took it in turns to beat him hard on the head. But after that they got tired again and moved on to the worst thing of all, the crucifixion. They got a heavy beam of wood and laid it on Jesus' back and made him carry it up the hill. Jesus did his best, but his head was dizzy from all the bashing and his body was sore from all the whipping. And he was tired. So tired. And when he eventually stumbled and fell, the Roman soldiers grabbed a man from the crowd, Simon, and made him carry it the rest of the way up the hill. When they got to the top of the hill, the soldiers took the wood and made a cross from it, and then they laid Jesus on it. And bang, 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 3 nails through his left hand, through his right hand, and through his feet. And then they put a sign on the top which said, "The King of the Jews." It was meant to be a joke, but the religious leaders weren't at all amused. No, that's not it at all. He's not the King of the Jews. He just said he is. But the Roman soldiers weren't listening. They propped up the cross and they waited for Jesus to die. The Roman soldiers had done their worst. So what did Jesus do? Well, he did the best thing he could do. He closed his eyes and prayed. "Father, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Listen. The thief hanging on the cross next to Jesus turns to him and croaks, "Jesus, if you really are the Messiah, the promised one sent to save us all, why on earth don't you save yourself and save us too?" Jesus doesn't say anything. The thief hanging on the cross on the other side of Jesus turns to his friend and says, "Show some respect. We deserve to be here. But this Jesus, he hasn't done anything wrong." And listen, he turns to Jesus and whispers what sounds like a prayer. Jesus, please remember me and take me with you when you go to your glory. Jesus says, listen, today you will be with me in paradise. And listen, Jesus has got something else to say. His heart is breaking, his body is aching, but there's something more that needs to be done. John, John, he calls, though the breath is very hard to find. John, take my mother here to be your mother. And mother, take John to be your son. And listen, there are other voices, the voices of the religious leaders. They're not kind voices. Jesus, Jesus, you saved others, eh? You healed the blind, you helped the lame walk. Then why are you hanging on the cross? Why didn't you come down? Jesus knows why he doesn't come down. God wants him to be there. He's there taking the punishment for all the bad things that anyone ever will do. Listen. Everyone has gone quiet. It's the middle of the day, normally the brightest moment, but it's gone completely dark. And it's like that for 3 hours. And then Jesus has one last thing to say. It is finished, he says. It is done. And with that, he dies. And with that, the religious leaders have got their way. And with that, his mother cries. And with that, the devil laughs himself silly. But listen. The earth rumbles and quakes and shakes. And the temple breaks. And its curtain is torn in two. Nobody's laughing now. And 2 soldiers are looking at Jesus and talking near the cross. Surely he was right. Surely he knew what he was saying. Surely that was the Son of God. Listen.